Plastic goes, they expand and shrink. Memories blur faster than you think. A moment's forever, the next.
Hello, and welcome to Cat Creates. My name is Kat, and I like to make things. In this video, I made the top 5 most popular wearable items off of Ravelry. Sorry, no emotional support chickens here. Maybe next time. I did this as an experiment to learn what makes a popular pattern popular and to learn new techniques that I hadn't tried before. A quick note about the patterns that you'll see here today. When I started planning and making this video a little over a month ago, the top patterns that I was going for are a little bit different than what you may see today. So if you were to go onto the top 5 patterns on Ravelry, you may see that number 5 in particular has shifted to something different. It has kind of gone back and forth a couple of times over the past month, but you will see that the one that I made, while it might not be number 5 now, it will be right next to it. So without further ado, let's get into the first pattern, the Sophie scarf by Petite Knit. Starting with the most popular pattern on Ravelry, you have probably heard of this one time and time again. And it really had its moment a couple of years ago when you couldn't go anywhere without seeing someone making this. In case you don't know, the Sophie scarf is a triangle mini scarf made up of the garter stitch and an I-cord edge. You increase along one edge, creating the elongated triangle. Now, I've been crocheting for somewhere in the ballpark of about 20 years. And it was actually seeing the Sophie scarf that made me want to get back into knitting. I had picked it up initially back in 2020, but seeing the Sophie scarf have its moment a couple years ago, I was like, that's really cute. I want to make one. So I am no stranger to this pattern. I have made it a couple of times now. And it is just a classic accessory that you can pair with so many different types of outfits. As for the pattern itself, it's beginner friendly in nature because the stitches used are very simple, but the garter stitch I-cord combo used, they make the rows incredibly difficult to read in my opinion. I would say if you are new to knitting and you want to try this, just be prepared to count every single row as you're going. Now, the one I made for this video is made up of the Hobby Black Friday wool in the color Sand. But as I said before, I have made several of these. So the first one I made was this one. All the ones I had made previously are made of mohair held double by grabbing one end, like the center pull and then the outside pull, and working them at the same time. So just one skein for each. So I have this green one here. This one's probably my favorite because this came from a skein of yarn that I got in Switzerland. And it was just a nice little keepsake that I was able to make. So I can always wear this and remember how amazing that trip was. And then I have another one in my favorite shade of green. As you can probably tell, I like green. So I think the Sophie scarf is a pretty good staple piece. I think you just can't go wrong with making one for yourself or for someone else. And like I said, with this one in particular, how I made it using like a keepsake yarn, and I can always just remember that trip. I think that's something that I want to start doing whenever I travel. You always want to grab yarn when you travel, at least I do. So now if I can only just think of like one skein of mohair, I know I can make a Sophie scarf out of it and I'd be very happy. So this gets a lot of use as to my other ones. Pattern number 2, the Musselburgh by Isolde Teague. And I apologize if I said your name wrong. The swatchless hat pattern, the Musselburgh, is a beanie pattern with room for so much versatility. First, it's swatchless, which means you can use nearly any yarn weight, use the recommended needle size for that yarn, and begin the project. The pattern gives you a gauge to follow after you've worked up a few rounds. The hat itself is built like a tube, so you start with one end, start with the crown of one side, and then you increase up. You just kind of keep going and stockinette rounds for ages, and then eventually you decrease back down, and then you'll tuck that other half inside to create your hat. This method allows for so much versatility, and the pattern even provides you with measurements. So if you wanted to change colors 2 or 4 times or just do stripes throughout, then they give you those measurements that you can follow. When making this hat, I used the same yarn that I had used for the Sophie scarf, which was the Hobby Black Friday yarn in Sand. And then I also used it in Sage to make the inside layer. So I started the Musselburgh hat yesterday. I did not film the start of it, mostly because this was incredibly difficult to get going. But once I figured it out, it was pretty easy. Yesterday was also Thanksgiving, so I didn't do any filming. I went to my mom's house and we had good food. So, but this is where I'm at with that so far. I don't know how to show this properly, but it's coming up pretty nicely, I'd say. Just currently working it up. I've still got several more increases to go until I get to the part where I just work in the round for like ever. Um, I'm debating if I'm going to use two colors to make it cool so I can actually wear the hat and not just feel like I'm just having a tan beanie for really no reason other than I needed to use this yarn that I had. So we'll see how that goes. But this is it so far. I think it looks really cool. It's pretty fun, pretty easy to do, pretty mindless for the most part. Using DPNs is always fun, but it's cool. To be completely honest, I did not have a great time making this hat. I don't want to blame the pattern because it is truly very well written. They give you so many measurements to follow, and I think I just messed up my gauge, which is funny considering that you make the gauge yourself, but I think I just measured it wrong. Um, so I think that's an entirely me issue, but it did come out. But it did come out quite oversized and kind of unwearable. It is 100% wool, so I do have the option to possibly felt it and shrink it a little bit. But overall, I'm not very happy with how this came out. Additionally, because this is a sport weight yarn, although it does feel a bit more like a lightweight yarn, this did take a long time to make, and I was just losing a lot of energy trying to work on it. I feel like if I had made it in a heavier yarn like a worsted, I would have been a little bit more um, enthusiastic about it. But I think it's a combination of the yarn that I used, the colors not really being super great together, and the weight of the yarn just not working with me. But again, this is not the pattern's fault. I'm going to blame user error entirely. I do want to try and make this again using different yarn and different colors. But for now, this is what we're working with. If I did have to voice any complaints about the pattern, though, I would say it would be the very beginning where you cast on. It says to cast on the stitches using your preferred center out cast on method, but having never done that before, I don't have any. It did list a few different types, but I did have to go and do research and to figure out which one worked best for me. For reference, the one that I liked was Emily Ocker's cast on, which for anyone else who crochets, it's basically using a magic ring. So yeah, my biggest takeaways would just be do research into which cast on you want. I wish that there were some written instructions as to how to do them within the pattern, but I probably would have still had to look up a visual anyway. And then measure your gauge a little bit better than how I did because mine is just not very good. I kind of hate it, but that is a me issue. Pattern number 3, the Ranunculus by Midori House. Again, I just made wearables in this video. This spot is currently still held by the emotional support chicken, but I just really didn't have any interest in making that pattern at this time. So I did just skip to the next one, which was the Ranunculus. The Ranunculus is a top-down round yoke pullover with so many layers of versatility. It is incredibly size inclusive with 11 different size options to choose from when making. Plus, it has a positive intended ease of 45 centimeters or so. So your biggest size can be even bigger than you might be used to. The pattern includes 2 different collar options as well as provides instructions for short or long sleeves. For the top I made, I used some leftover yarn from my stash, which was just some old K&C cotton from Joann's. I don't have the color names. I chose the cast on for the wider neckline, which used the double twist loop cast on, a method I had never heard of before. So I immediately had to reference one of the dozens of videos within the Ravelry page, but there are so many different resources within that page for you to utilize. After the ribbing on the collar, you go into the German short rows and then into the yoke. The yoke was a lot of fun for me, actually. I love learning new stitches, and there was just a lot of different things to learn. a lot of different techniques, and yeah, it was really cool. For some of these stitches, I did have to reference the video tutorials within the Ravelry page, but for most of them, they were pretty straightforward. Come on. Pumpkin has joined us for the rest of the video, or at least for now. So everyone say hi. Hi, baby girl. The thing is with the yoke is it is the same for all the sizes. So you start with the same stitch count. And then once you finish the yoke, you increase for raglan sizes. And from there is where you're going to build it out to the size that you desired. So for me, I did a size 2 because it is so size inclusive and had quite a wide range. And I didn't want mine to be super oversized. But also I was working with a very limited yarn. So once you finish the raglan, you just start doing stockinette, which is where I was starting to run out of yarn. Since I was using leftover yarn, I knew I wasn't going to have enough to finish the bottom, so I did switch to a teal color for the hem, and then I did end up using that same teal on the sleeves. I wish I had thought ahead to make the ribbing in the teal as well, but sadly, I did not. But I do quite like it. I think it's pretty cool. Now, once I finished the body, I moved on to the sleeves, and I had forgotten, or I didn't read the pattern very well, because right next to the long sleeve portion, when you are adjusting for the body and like whatever, there was a short sleeve option right there, and I completely missed that. So that's on me. But you would have bound off for those sleeves right then and there. But I'm kind of glad in a way that I didn't, because I was able to very easily just add the ribbing that I wanted to for the teal, just so it makes a little bit more sense with the bottom of the shirt. Overall, I really enjoyed this pattern. It worked up quite quickly, I would say in the span of about 3 or 4 days. Since you are using very big needles, I believe they are 6mm, although I'll probably go up to a 7mm next time because I usually have a pretty tight gauge. I just figured since it was supposed to be really oversized, it wouldn't matter. I love the samples or the testers that have done it in a complete mohair. So I think for the next one I make, I'm going to do it in that because I just really love that look. Pattern number 4, the Oslo hat by Petite Knit. This is another hat constructed completely differently from the Musselburgh. The Oslo hat is knit from the bottom up. You cast on the width of the hat, knit up to the desired length, fold your work in half, and then knit together. And then you start shaping up the top and the crown of the head after decreasing. I made mine out of the Luxe Merino wool from Loops and Threads. I had some left over from a different project. I don't want to shame the Musselburgh hat in any way, shape, or form, because again, I think my main issue was a me problem as well as just the wrong yarn used for it. But I would say of the 2 hats, if I were to make one again, it would be this one. I think that this one came out just looking a lot more chic. I really love the built-in folded edge. I think it just looks so clean. I don't know if I can wear it with this hairstyle. Forgive me, the hairstyle I have right now isn't really a custom for a hat, but I really like how the hat came out. This hat worked up in the span of a few days, and I was able to finish like the entire head portion in just like one evening. The longest part was definitely all the stockinette to do the brim. As for the pattern itself, the instructions were written very cleanly, very easy to understand. I did not have to look up anything. It's pretty standard with a Petite Knit pattern. I think she is a very good pattern writer. I think everyone kind of knows that who's used her patterns, so no shame to anyone else at all. She just is very experienced with her patterns. But this is definitely a pattern I would recommend for a beginner for sure. It was very, very easy. And finally, pattern number 5, Vanilla Socks on 9-inch Circulars by Crazy Sock Lady Designs. If you look on Ravelry now, you may see a different pattern in this spot. But as I said, I started this project a little over a month ago, and the spot goes back and forth between this pattern and the Step-by-Step sweater by Florence Miller. But when I looked initially, it was this. So that's what I made. I had actually really been wanting to make a pair of socks for quite some time just because it's something different. And I typically only really reach for like sweaters. So I wanted to try a little something different just so I can have that technique down. So when I was planning for this video and I saw that pattern as like the fifth one, I was like actually pretty excited because I had kind of always wanted to make a sock. So the yarn I used was the Sweet Sock yarn in the color Oasis by Twisted Ambitions Yarn. The vanilla sock pattern comes in 3 sizes. And while I wanted to make the smallest size because I think it would have fit my foot much better, I was struggling with the stitch count to actually work it within those needles. So I did end up sizing up to a medium. The sock is knit from the cuff down. So you start with the ribbing and then you go into the leg of the sock. You then build out the heel ribbing portion, then the actual heel itself, and then you shape the foot into the toe. Now, the actual gusset portion, which was right after the heel, this was the only portion I actually had an issue when it comes to the pattern itself. There was like a block of text on there. And for me, if you need to include stitches that you need to pick up in certain places, you should probably indicate those a little bit more boldly. So highlight, bold, underline something. You're supposed to pick up stitches additionally along, like, so like you make one right, make one left, whatever, alongside actually picking up the stitches. And I had missed that. So I had to undo an entire round in order to go and get my stitch count to be correct. So that's like my only real issue with the actual pattern. Everything else about the pattern was written very clearly. I was able to understand it very well. This is the finished sock. I think it is very, very cute. I think it is too big for me, unfortunately, just because, like I said, I think I need a small. But I think it was a really unique thing to make, having never made socks before. I was pretty excited. I do still have to make the second one, but because I was working on this was like the third item I made for the video, and I was planning out all this, and I was afraid I was not going to have enough time. So I will start on the second sock very soon. I just needed to finish everything else first. Making the sock was really fun because the needles, I believe they were like 2.25 millimeter needles. They were so tiny. It was so cute. I just felt like a giant using them. And because they're 9 inches, it was just super, super tiny. As for the socks themselves, I think this is a very good beginner sock pattern. And for me, I'm glad I started with this when I start as someone who had never made a sock before. Um, but for me, I think I will finish the other sock for this so I can have the mate. And then any socks I make in the future, I don't know if I'll really make this one again just because it is so plain. I think I'm more of a lacy kind of person. I need to have interest in a pattern, and this just did not draw me in super well for a good chunk of it because it is just stockinette over and over again. So I think I might look into like some cute lacy sock patterns or some color work socks or something for me personally. But for a beginner sock, this is an amazing option. And that is it for this video. I had a lot of fun working on all of these projects, and I definitely learned a lot as well. I think this was a great way for me to get out of my comfort zone and to try new things that I had been wanting to try but had been putting off. All I ever really think about making are tops and sweaters. So for me to finally indulge in making a sock or a couple hats, it felt really good to embrace that for a little bit. Please let me know if you liked this video. I would be open to doing this again. I maybe even include the emotional support chicken if that's what people want to see. That guy is pretty cute. If you did like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up so that other people may see it as well. And if you like what you see and you want to stick around, please consider subscribing. I upload new videos every other Sunday. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day wherever you are in the world. And that's it. I love you. Bye.